On a bitterly cold winter night, two 5-year-old sisters huddled beside their dying mother outside the gates of a billionaire's home. One whispered, "We haven't eaten anything since yesterday." He nearly left. But when those doors opened, they not only saved their lives, but also shattered his past and rebuilt a family. The snow fell hard that December night. Not the gentle kind that belonged on postcards, but thick, relentless sheets that erased edges and swallowed sound. Beacon Hollow looked beautiful from a distance, streetlights glowing gold, rooftops dusted white. But down on the pavement, the cold was cruel. It cut through coats, slipped into bones, and made every breath burn. Declan Waverley, 41, walked alone toward his car, the echo of another late meeting still ringing in his ears. His black wool coat was tailored expensive and useless against the emptiness that followed him everywhere. As CEO of Waverley Urban Group, he was used to control numbers, clean decisions. His house waited 2 blocks away, a historic mansion with iron gates and warm lights glowing behind tall windows. Too big. Too quiet. Exactly how he'd designed his life after the divorce. He told himself he preferred it that way. As he reached the gates, something shifted in his peripheral vision. 2 small shapes pressed against the stone wall just outside his property. Declan slowed. A woman sat slumped against the cold stone, her blonde hair tangled and dusted with snow, her gray sweater far too thin for this weather. Her head lolled slightly, chin dipping toward her chest. In front of her stood 2 little girls, no older than 5, huddled together as if they were trying to become one body. They were identical, blonde hair, pale faces, but their expressions were different. One stood straighter, eyes alert, jaw set in forced calm. The other clutched a worn teddy bear to her chest, fingers stiff and red from the cold. Declan's first instinct was to keep walking. The city had shelters, programs, protocols. Then the braver twin lifted her gaze and looked directly at him. "Sir," she whispered, her voice shaking but steady, "we haven't eaten since yesterday. The snow kept falling." Declan stopped. For a moment, Declan said nothing. He crouched down, slowly bringing himself level with the children. Up close, he could see how thin they were, how their coats barely qualified as winter clothing. The braver one, Junie, stood slightly in front, as if shielding her sister by instinct alone. The other, Blythe, pressed the teddy bear into her chest, eyes, glassy lips, trembling. "How long have you been out here?" Declan asked quietly. Junie hesitated, calculating, then answered, "Since it got dark." Declan glanced at the woman behind them. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. Her skin looked gray beneath the streetlight. "What about your mom?" he asked. Junie swallowed. "She got sick. She tried to find a shelter, but they were full. Then she couldn't walk anymore. So we sat here. There's a wall. A wall. As if that was protection." Blythe tugged on Junie's sleeve, whispering, "It's really cold." Declan reached out and touched the woman's wrist. His fingers recoiled at the shock. She was icy, far colder than someone simply uncomfortable. This wasn't just exposure. This was dangerous. "What's her name?" he asked. Marina Vale, Junie said. "She's our mom. And you, I'm Junie. She's Blythe. We're 5. Declan stood abruptly and pulled out his phone, dialing 911. His voice was calm, but something tight had settled in his chest. "Yes," he said. "I need an ambulance. Adult female, unresponsive, severe cold exposure. 2 children with her." He hung up and looked down at the twins. "I live right here," he said, nodding toward the gates behind him. "I'm going to take you inside where it's warm. Is that okay?" Junie's eyes widened. "Really," Declan nodded. "But we have to hurry. Your mom needs help." Blythe tightened her grip on the teddy bear as the iron gates slowly began to open. Declan bent down and carefully lifted Marina into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. The realization hit him harder than the cold. This was a woman who had been worn down, stripped piece by illness, poverty, and time. Her head fell against his shoulder, as he turned toward the open gates. Junie walked beside him, her small hand wrapped tightly around Blythe's. Blythe stumbled once, then steadied herself, never letting go of the teddy bear. As they crossed the threshold, the world changed. The wind died, the snow muffled. Warm light spilled across polished stone floors as Declan pushed open the front door. Heat rushed out to meet them, making Blythe gasp. "It's warm," she whispered, like she didn't trust it. Inside, Mrs. Gow, the housekeeper, looked up from the kitchen and froze at the sight of Declan carrying an unconscious woman with 2 small children trailing behind. Declan said quickly, "I need blankets, warm water, not hot, and call Dr. Harlan Pike. Tell him it's an emergency." Mrs. Gow didn't ask questions. She moved. Declan laid Marina on the sofa and tucked thick blankets around her. Junie stood rigid nearby, watching every movement. Blythe climbed onto the edge of the couch, touching her mother's hand. "Is she going to die?" Junie asked. The question landed like a blade. Declan knelt in front of her. "No," he said, choosing the word carefully. "She's very sick, but help is coming." Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Mrs. Gow returned with blankets and a bowl of warm water. Declan gently rubbed Marina's hands, willing warmth back into them. Junie's voice dropped to a whisper. "We didn't do anything wrong." Declan looked at her sharply. "I know," he said. "And you're not in trouble. Not here." The sirens grew louder. Outside, the snow kept falling, but for the first time that night, the cold was losing its grip. The living room filled with quiet urgency. Mrs. Gow moved swiftly, layering blankets over Marina's frail body, placing warm towels along her arms and neck. Declan watched the woman's chest rise and fall, too shallow, too uneven. He had signed contracts worth millions without blinking, but now his hands trembled as he checked Marina's breathing again. Junie stood near the sofa, feet planted back straight like a soldier refusing to retreat. Blythe climbed onto the couch and curled beside her mother, pressing the teddy bear against Marina's side, as if it could anchor her to the world. "She's cold," Blythe whispered. "She's always cold lately." Declan swallowed. "She won't be for long." The sound of sirens grew louder, slicing through the muffled hush of the house. Junie flinched at the noise, then quickly recovered, forcing calm back onto her small face. "I told her to keep moving," Junie said suddenly. "But she said her legs wouldn't listen anymore." Declan turned to her. "You did everything you could." Junie shook her head. "I'm the big sister. I'm supposed to fix things." The words hit him harder than any accusation ever could. Mrs. Gow returned with a small bowl of soup steam curling into the air. "For the girls," she said gently. Blythe hesitated, eyes flicking from the bowl to her mother. "Can Mommy eat first?" "She will," Declan said softly. "Right now you need strength." Blythe accepted the spoon with shaking hands. Junie waited until her sister swallowed before taking any herself. The front door burst open moments later as paramedics rushed in, boots wet with melting snow. The room transformed instantly, voices overlapping equipment, clicking open oxygen masks, snapping into place. "Hypothermia," one paramedic muttered. "Pulse is weak." "She's also sick," Declan said quickly. "She's been out in the cold all night. 2 kids with her." The paramedics worked efficiently, lifting Marina onto a stretcher. Blythe whimpered and grabbed at the blanket. "I'm right here," Junie told her. "I won't let them take her." Declan knelt beside the stretcher. "They're helping her," he said. "I promise." One of the paramedics turned to him. "She needs the hospital. Severe hypothermia, likely pneumonia." "And the children?" the paramedic asked. Declan looked at Junie and Blythe, small, exhausted, brave beyond reason. "They stay with me," he said. The words left his mouth before he could second-guess them. The ambulance doors slammed shut, red lights bleeding across the snow-covered street. Declan stood beside the vehicle, Junie and Blythe tucked close to him, their small bodies pressed against his coat. Blythe clung to his sleeve with one hand, and her teddy bear with the other. "Are they taking Mommy away?" she asked, panic edging into her voice. "They're taking her somewhere safe," Declan replied. "I'm coming with you." Junie looked up sharply. "You are?" "Yes." Inside the ambulance, the heat was almost overwhelming. Blythe's teeth chattered as her body reacted to the sudden warmth. Junie kept one hand on her sister and watched the paramedics like a hawk memorizing every movement. At the hospital, Marina was rushed into the emergency department. The twins stood frozen under harsh fluorescent lights, suddenly very small in the cavernous hallway. A nurse knelt in front of them. "Sweethearts, we're going to help your mom, okay?" Blythe nodded mutely. Junie asked, "Will she wake up?" "Yes," the nurse said gently. "But it may take some time." Time. Declan guided the girls to a row of chairs. Blythe's head dropped onto his arm within minutes, exhaustion finally winning. Junie stayed awake, eyes scanning every passing doctor and nurse. After several minutes, a woman in a navy blazer approached. Her badge read, "Tessa Rourke, Social Services." "Sir," she said, professional but guarded. "I need to speak with you." Declan stepped aside reluctantly. "The girls stay together," he said immediately. "That's our goal," Tessa replied. "But we need to follow procedure." "Are you a relative?" "No." "Do you know their mother? I met her tonight." Tessa's expression hardened slightly. "Then the children will need temporary placement." Declan felt something hot flare in his chest. Their mother is fighting for her life in there. They've been homeless. Splitting them up now would traumatize them further. Tessa folded her arms. Good intentions don't override child safety. Junie appeared at Declan's side, silent as a shadow. "Please don't separate us," she said quietly. Tessa hesitated just for a fraction of a second. "I'm not trying to take them forever," Declan said. "Let them stay with me tonight. You can run background checks, home visits, anything." Tessa studied him carefully. "One night," she said finally. "Temporary, pending review." Declan exhaled, not realizing he'd been holding his breath. Blythe stirred. "Are we going home?" Declan looked at the small face pressed against his coat. "Yes," he said. "You're coming home with me." The drive back to the mansion was quiet. Snow continued to fall softer now, as if the storm itself was losing strength. Blythe slept curled against Declan's side in the back seat, her teddy bear tucked under her chin. Junie sat upright, watching the road through the window, counting streetlights to stay awake. Mrs. Gao had prepared a guest room, fresh sheets, extra blankets, a small nightlight plugged into the wall. The room looked perfect. Too perfect. Junie paused at the doorway. "This isn't a hotel, right?" Declan frowned slightly. "No. Because hotels make you leave." The truth of it hit him all at once. "You're not leaving tonight," he said. "Or tomorrow." Junie nodded, filing the information away like something fragile. Blythe climbed into the bed and immediately curled into a tight ball. "It smells clean," she murmured, "like mornings." Declan helped Junie tuck her sister in, then turned to leave. Junie cleared her throat. "Sir, you don't have to call me that." She thought for a moment. "Mr. Waverley." He smiled faintly. "That works. Mr. Waverley." Junie said carefully, "We're not bad kids." The words stopped him cold. He knelt in front of her. "Why would you think that? 'Cause people look at us like we did something wrong," she said. "Like being outside was our fault." Declan met her eyes, steady and serious. "Listen to me. What happened to you and your sister is not your fault. Not even a little." Junie's lip trembled despite her effort to stay composed. She nodded once. In the hallway, Declan leaned against the wall, the weight of the night finally crashing down on him. He had invited strangers into his life, into his home. He had disrupted every carefully controlled routine he'd built to protect himself from feeling too much. And yet, from the guest room came the soft sound of Blythe breathing slow and even. Safe. Declan closed his eyes. For the first time in years, the mansion didn't feel empty. It felt awake. Morning came quietly, like it wasn't sure it was welcome. Soft winter light filtered through tall windows, touching polished floors that had not seen toys or small shoes in years. Declan woke to a sound he didn't recognize at first, a faint shuffling in the hallway. He opened his bedroom door to find Junie standing there, still dressed in yesterday's clothes, her hair tangled from sleep. "Is my mom alive?" she asked. Declan didn't soften the truth, but he chose his words carefully. "She's stable. She's awake. She's asking for you." Junie exhaled a sound that was half relief, half release. Behind her, Blythe peeked out from the guest room, clutching her teddy bear like a lifeline. "Are we in trouble now?" Blythe whispered. "No," Declan said firmly. "You're having breakfast." In the kitchen, Mrs. Gao was already at the stove flipping pancakes with quiet efficiency. The smell filled the room, warm, sweet, unreal. Blythe's eyes widened. "Are those for us, they are?" Mrs. Gao replied with a smile. Junie sat perfectly straight at the table, hands folded as if waiting for permission that never came. Declan placed a plate in front of her anyway. As they ate, Junie spoke in a measured voice. "Before Mommy got sick, she was a nurse. She helped kids. Then she couldn't work anymore. We had to leave our apartment." Declan listened, something tightening in his chest. Blythe chewed slowly. "Mommy said everything would be okay if we stayed together." Declan looked at the twins and realized something that unsettled him deeply. They weren't just afraid of being homeless. They were afraid of being separated. His phone buzzed on the counter. A message from Tessa Rourke. "I'll be by later today. We need to talk about next steps." Declan locked his phone and looked at the girls. "I'm taking you to see your mom," he said. "And after that, we'll figure things out. Together." Junie nodded. Blythe reached across the table and grabbed her sister's hand. They had learned not to let go. The hospital felt colder during the day. Marina lay propped up in bed, color slowly returning to her face, IV lines snaking across white sheets. When she saw the twins, tears streamed down her cheeks before she could speak. "My girls," she whispered. Junie climbed onto the bed, carefully mindful of the wires. Blythe followed, curling into her mother's side. "I'm sorry," Marina said hoarsely. "I tried. I really tried." Junie pressed her forehead to Marina's arm. "We're okay now." Marina looked past her daughters to Declan. "You're the man who helped us." "Yes," he said. Declan waveringly. "Thank you," she said. "We'll leave as soon as I'm discharged. I won't be a burden." Before Declan could respond, Tessa Rourke stepped into the room. "Ms. Vale," she said gently. "I'm with social services." Marina stiffened immediately. "We need to discuss temporary arrangements for your daughters," Tessa continued, "while you recover." "No," Marina said, panic flaring. "They stay with me." Tessa shook her head. "You're not well enough to care for them alone." Junie slid off the bed and stood in front of her mother. "Please don't take us away." Tessa crouched down. "I'm not trying to hurt you. It always hurts," Junie replied quietly. Declan felt the words like a punch. "They can stay with me," he said. "I'll be responsible, background checks, home visits, anything." Tessa studied him. Why Declan hesitated. The honest answer surprised even him. Because someone has to choose them. Silence stretched across the room. Finally, Tessa nodded. "Temporary placement," she said. "With conditions, and I'll be watching closely." Marina's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve this help." Declan met her gaze. "You deserve rest," Blythe tugged on Marina's sleeve. "Mommy, please get better." "We'll be good." Marina broke down, then sobbing quietly as she held her daughters. Declan stood nearby, realizing that whatever this was becoming, it was no longer a single good deed. It was a responsibility. That evening, the mansion felt different. Not louder. Not messier. Heavier. Declan set up a small table in the living room with crayons and paper. Blythe drew hearts and stick figures. Junie drew a house with 3 windows and carefully colored smoke coming out of the chimney. "That means someone's home," she explained. Declan nodded, throat tight. Mrs. Gow served dinner, simple, warm food. Blythe ate until she was full, then asked if she could save the rest in case tomorrow is bad. Declan gently told her there would be food tomorrow too. She didn't fully believe him. After baths, the twins climbed into bed together, Blythe's teddy bear wedged between them like a third sibling. Junie insisted the light stay on, just in case, she said. Declan sat on the edge of the bed. "I'll be right down the hall." Junie studied his face. "You promise?" "I promise." Later, long after the house had gone quiet, Declan stood alone in his kitchen, staring at the snow through the window. He had spent years building walls between himself and people, himself and pain. And now 2 5-year-old girls had walked straight through them without asking permission. His phone buzzed again. "Ms. Vale's condition is stable. Expected recovery is good with proper care." Declan exhaled slowly. He thought of Junie's drawing, a house with smoke. Proof of life. For the first time since his divorce, Declan didn't dread the morning. He dreaded the idea of failing someone who was already trusting him with everything. The call came just after noon. Declan was in his office trying and failing to focus on quarterly reports when the hospital number flashed across his phone. His chest tightened as he answered. "Mr. Waverley, the nurse, said Ms. Vale is asking to speak with you." He stepped into a quiet conference room. Marina's voice came through, weak but clear. "They say I'll need at least another week," she said. "Maybe longer. I don't know what happens after that. We'll figure it out," Declan replied. There was a pause. "I don't want my daughters thinking I abandoned them." Declan looked out at the city below, glass towers rising above streets where people froze in doorways. "They won't," he said. "They know you're fighting." After the call, Declan drove to the hospital with Junie and Blythe. In the elevator, Blythe asked softly, "Is Mommy broken forever?" "No," Declan said. "She's hurt." "That's different." At Marina's bedside, the twins climbed carefully onto the mattress. Marina stroked their hair, her hands still trembling. "I'm so scared," she admitted. "I worked my whole life helping people. Then I got sick. And suddenly I was invisible." Declan listened, anger simmering beneath his calm. This woman had given everything to a system that discarded her the moment she needed help. That afternoon, Tessa Rourke pulled Declan aside. "There's a risk here," she said. "Ms. Vale's medical condition is chronic. Stability matters." "I know," Declan replied. "Then you understand this can't be an emotional decision." Declan met her gaze. "It already is. But it's also practical. I have space, resources, and I'm not going anywhere." Tessa nodded slowly. "I'll document that." As they left the hospital, Junie slipped her hand into Declan's. "Thank you for not giving up," she said. He squeezed her fingers gently, realizing he hadn't just stepped into their crisis. He'd stepped into the space where the system had failed them. Recovery was not graceful. Marina returned to the house a week later, thinner than before her movements, careful as if one wrong step might shatter her. Declan converted a guest suite into a quiet recovery space, extra pillows, humidifier, medications, laid out with military precision. Marina noticed everything. "You didn't have to do all this." "I did," Declan said simply. The twins hovered constantly. Junie reminded her mother to take medicine. Blythe pressed her ear to Marina's chest at night to listen to her breathing. One evening, Marina's cough worsened. The sound echoed down the hallway, sharp and frightening. Junie appeared in Declan's doorway minutes later. "She can't stop," Junie said. "Is this how it starts again?" Declan drove Marina to an urgent care clinic. Without hesitation, the twins bundled in the back seat. The doctor adjusted medication, reassured them, but the fear lingered. Back home, Marina sat on the edge of the bed, head in her hands. "I'm a risk," she whispered. "To them. To you." Declan crouched in front of her. "You're a person. People get sick. They deserve a mother who doesn't collapse. They deserve honesty," he replied. "And love. You have both." From the doorway, Blythe watched silently. Later that night, Declan overheard the twins whispering. "If Mommy goes away," Blythe said, "will we go away too?" Junie didn't answer right away. "Not if we're careful." Declan leaned against the wall, heart pounding. These children were already shaping their behavior around survival. He realized then that providing shelter wasn't enough. They needed certainty, and certainty required a decision Declan had been avoiding. The meeting happened 2 days later. Declan invited Tessa Rourke to the house. Marina sat across from her at the dining table, shoulders tense, hands folded tightly in her lap. Junie and Blythe colored quietly nearby, pretending not to listen. "I need to be clear," Tessa said. "Temporary placement cannot become indefinite without structure." Declan nodded. "Then let's build structure." He laid out his plan calmly. Marina would stay until medically cleared. He would coordinate specialists for her autoimmune condition. The twins would enroll in a nearby school with counseling support. Tessa would conduct regular check-ins. And after that, Tessa asked. Declan didn't hesitate. "If Marina wants to work, I'll help her find a role that fits her health. No pressure, no obligation." Marina's voice shook. "I can't repay this." Declan turned to her. "Then don't. This isn't charity. It's stability." Junie looked up. "Does that mean we won't have to move again?" Tessa answered honestly. "It means we're trying very hard to make sure you don't." Blythe hugged her teddy bear tighter. "Trying is better than nothing." Silence filled the room. Finally, Tessa stood. "I'll approve extended temporary placement," she said, "with oversight." Marina exhaled in a sob she didn't try to hide. After Tessa left, Marina covered her face with her hands. "Why are you doing this?" she asked Declan quietly. He considered the answer. "Because I spent years building a life that looked successful and felt empty, and you and your daughters walked into it and made it real." Junie stepped closer to him. "Does that mean we can stay?" Declan knelt to her level. "It means I'm not letting you fall again." Blythe smiled for the first time without fear. Outside, the snow began to fall once more, but this time the house held firm. Recovery did not arrive all at once. It came in fragments, quiet mornings, measured breaths, the slow rebuilding of trust in a body that had betrayed Marina once already. The guest suite became her world, soft light, neatly arranged medication, a chair by the window where she could sit and watch the snow melt into gray slush along the street. Every morning, Junie checked the clock before school and reminded her mother blue pill first. Then the white one. Every night, Blythe insisted on counting Marina's breaths before she would fall asleep. Declan watched all of it from a careful distance. He arranged appointments with specialists who didn't rush Marina through 10-minute visits. He sat in waiting rooms without checking his phone. He learned the sound of Marina's cough when it was harmless and when it meant trouble. One afternoon, Marina found him in the kitchen reading through a stack of medical notes. "You don't have to do that," she said quietly. "I want to understand," Declan replied. She hesitated, then sat across from him. "I used to be the one explaining things to patients," she said. "Now I'm the one afraid of every symptom." "You're allowed to be afraid," he said. "You've been strong long enough." The words undid her. Marina covered her mouth as tears spilled over, silent and uncontrollable. Declan didn't rush to fix it. He simply stayed. That evening, Junie came home from school unusually quiet. She set her backpack down and stared at the floor. "Someone asked why we live in such a big house," she said. "They said kids like us don't belong there." Declan felt the old anger rise, but Junie raised her hand. I told them houses don't decide who belongs, she said. People do. Blythe beamed. And we belong here. Declan turned away before they could see the emotion on his face. That night, after the twins were asleep, Marina stood in the doorway of the living room. They're changing, she said softly. They're starting to feel safe. Declan nodded. So are you. She looked at him for a long moment. You're changing too. He didn't deny it. For the first time in years, Declan felt present in his own life, not managing, not escaping, but breathing alongside other people. And for the first time since getting sick, Marina slept through the night without fear of not waking up. The house learned the sound of children. It learned the rhythm of mornings, small footsteps racing down the stairs, the clatter of spoons, Blythe singing nonsense songs while Junie corrected her lyrics. The silence that had once defined the mansion retreated room by room. Declan found himself leaving work early. He helped Junie with spelling words at the dining table, pretending not to smile when she corrected him. He taught Blythe how to make grilled cheese standing behind her at the stove, guiding her tiny hands while Mrs. Gow supervised with amused approval. Marina watched these moments with quiet disbelief. One afternoon, she joined Declan in the backyard as he helped the twins build a lopsided snowman. You're good with them, she said. Declan shrugged. They're good with me. She laughed softly, then grew serious. I'm scared of getting used to this. Why? Because if I lose it. Her voice trailed off. Declan looked at her carefully. Then we deal with that if it happens, not before. Later that week, Marina received a call and interview offer for a care coordinator position at a nearby hospital. Predictable hours, medical accommodations. She stared at the phone after hanging up. I don't know if I'm ready, she admitted. You don't have to be perfect, Declan said. You just have to show up. Junie overheard and nodded solemnly. Mommy always shows up. Blythe hugged Marina's leg, even when she's tired. That night, after the twins were asleep, Marina and Declan sat in the living room sharing tea. I used to think asking for help meant I'd failed, Marina said. Now I think refusing it almost destroyed us. Declan looked at her, really looked at her, not as someone he was rescuing, but as someone he respected. I spent years thinking independence meant isolation, he said. Turns out it just meant I was lonely. Their eyes met, and something unspoken settled between them, gentle, unforced, real. Outside, snow began to fall again. Inside, the house was warm. The night Marina got sick again, it was Blythe who noticed first. She's breathing funny, Blythe whispered from the hallway, panic threading her small voice. Declan was out of bed instantly. Marina was pale, sweating her breaths, shallow and uneven. Junie stood rigid in the doorway, fear flooding her eyes. Is it happening again? Junie asked. No, Declan said firmly, though his heart pounded. Not like before. He got Marina stabilized, called the doctor, followed instructions with steady hands. The episode passed, but the fear did not. Afterward, Marina sat on the edge of the bed, shaking. I can't keep putting them through this, she said. Every time I cough, they think they're losing me. Declan knelt in front of her. They're not losing you. They're learning that sickness doesn't mean abandonment. Junie stepped forward. We don't need you to be unbreakable, she said. Just don't disappear. Blythe nodded fiercely. We'll be brave with you. Something in Declan broke open. He realized this was no longer temporary, no longer a good deed. This was a family forming, fragile, imperfect, but real. Later that night, after the twins were asleep, Declan sat alone in his study. He looked at the framed photo of his father on the desk. You were right, he said quietly. Success doesn't mean anything if you don't share it. The next morning, he made a decision. He began the paperwork to establish the Winter Bridge Foundation emergency housing and medical support for healthcare workers in crisis. When he told Marina, she covered her mouth, overwhelmed. You don't have to change the world. I don't want to, Declan said. I just don't want this to happen to anyone else. Junie hugged him without warning. Blythe followed, wrapping her arms around both of them. In that moment, standing in the kitchen, sunlight spilling across the floor, Declan understood something. With absolute clarity, he hadn't saved them. They had saved each other. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday. It was thin, official, and cruelly polite, one of those envelopes that looked harmless until you opened it and realized it could reshape your life. Mrs. Gao placed it on the kitchen counter next to the fruit bowl as if it belonged beside oranges and ordinary things. Declan opened it, while Junie and Blythe were at school. Notice of review, child placement status. His jaw tightened as he read. It wasn't an accusation, not technically. It was worse than that. It was a reminder that stability could be revoked by a signature, that temporary was a leash held by someone else. Tessa Rourke's name appeared at the bottom as the assigned caseworker, but the notice wasn't from her. It was from the department. A supervisor. A policy review triggered by extended placement with non-relative guardian. Declan set the paper down and stared out the window at the bare winter trees. He'd built an empire on predictability. This was unpredictable in the most personal way. When Marina came into the kitchen, she took one look at his face and froze. What happened? He handed her the letter. Marina's hands shook. She read it once, then again. Her eyes filled fast. They're going to take them, she whispered. No, Declan said, voice firm. They're going to try to follow procedure, and we're going to show them the truth. Marina's breath hitched. I can't fight them. I'm barely standing most days. Declan moved closer, lowering his voice like he was speaking to someone on the edge of a ledge. Then I'll fight. But you have to stop assuming you'll lose. Before she could answer, his phone rang. Unknown number. Declan hesitated, then answered. Declan Waverley. A man's voice slid through the speaker, smooth, confident. Is this the billionaire who picked up my kids? The words turned the kitchen cold. Marina's face went white. She didn't have to ask who it was. The way her shoulders tightened told Declan everything. Who is this? Declan demanded. A laugh. Name's Gavin Cross. I'm the father. I just found out my daughters are living in a mansion with a stranger, so I'm calling to claim what's mine. Marina's knees nearly buckled. Declan caught her elbow. You left, Marina said into the phone, voice cracking. You disappeared. You haven't paid a dime. I had my reasons, Gavin interrupted. But now I'm here, and I want my girls. Declan felt heat rise behind his eyes. You don't get to vanish for years, and then show up like a receipt you forgot in your pocket. You don't get to keep children who aren't yours, Gavin snapped. I already spoke to someone. Social services. This is going to get complicated. The line went dead. For a moment, no one moved. Then Marina covered her face, a sob ripping out of her chest. He's going to destroy everything. Declan held her steady. He's not, he said. Not if we tell the truth. Not if we do this right. That afternoon, Junie and Blythe ran in from school, cheeks pink from cold, laughing about something silly. Declan watched them, and the fear in his chest sharpened into something else. Resolve. He knelt as they took off their boots. Girls, he said gently. We might have to talk to Ms. Rourke again. Junie's smile flickered. Are we leaving? Blythe clutched her teddy bear tighter. Are we getting split up? Declan looked them in the eyes, one at a time, making a promise he knew would cost him something. No, he said. Not while I can stand in the way. The social services office didn't look like a place where people's futures were decided. It looked like beige walls, cheap chairs, and fluorescent lights that made everyone's skin look sick. Declan hated it instantly. Tessa Rourke met them in the lobby with a folder pressed to her chest. She looked tired, but her eyes were sharp. I didn't know he would show up, she said quietly to Marina. Marina's voice was thin. Neither did I. Junie and Blythe sat between Declan and Marina's knees, swinging anxiously. Blythe whispered, I don't like this place. Junie placed her hand over Blythe's. Stay close. Declan watched that tiny gesture and felt something twist inside him. Kids shouldn't have to manage fear like this. They were brought into a small conference room. Across the table sat a department supervisor, a lawyer, and like a stain that wouldn't wash out, Gavin Cross. He was mid-30s, well-groomed, wearing a coat that looked expensive enough to signal he'd turned his life around. His smile was all performance. There they are, Gavin said, eyes sliding to the twins. My girls. Blythe shrank. Junie's jaw tightened. Marina's hands trembled. They don't know you. Gavin leaned back. That's what I'm here to fix. The supervisor cleared her throat. We're here to review temporary placement status and assess the best interest of the children. Declan spoke calmly. Then assess the facts. Ms. Vale and the twins were found outside my gates in severe winter conditions. Ms. Vale had hypothermia and pneumonia. The children had not eaten since the previous day. I called emergency services. I provided safe shelter. Since then, Ms. Vale has recovered under medical supervision. The twins are enrolled in school. There have been consistent check-ins. The supervisor nodded slightly. Mr. Cross claims he can provide a stable home and that he is their biological father. Gavin opened his hands. I made mistakes, he said, voice practiced. But I'm ready now. I have a place. I have a job. I can give them what they need. Junie's eyes flashed. You weren't ready when Mommy cried. The room stilled. Gavin blinked. Sweetheart. Junie cut him off, voice steady, trembling only at the edges. You didn't call. You didn't send food. You didn't come when it was cold. We had to sleep outside. You can't just show up and take us, Blythe whispered, barely audible. I don't know you. Gavin's smile twitched, cracking for a second, before he patched it back together. They're confused, he said quickly. They've been influenced. Declan's hands curled into fists under the table. He forced them open again. Tessa leaned forward. Mr. Cross, can you explain why you left? Why there was no support? Gavin's eyes flicked. Personal issues. I wasn't in a good place. Marina's voice rose for the first time. You were in a good enough place to start over with someone else. Gavin's face tightened. That's not relevant. It is, Tessa said coldly. Because children aren't props for redemption. The supervisor looked at Declan. Mr. Waverley, what is your long-term involvement here? Declan didn't hesitate. I'm committed to their stability, as long as Ms. Vale wants it. I'm not asking to replace her. I'm asking to protect them. Gavin scoffed. So you're buying a family? Declan leaned forward, his voice low but controlled. No. I'm doing what you refused to do for 5-year-old girls who were freezing outside in a storm. If you want to call that buying, that says more about you than it does about me. Gavin's eyes hardened. This isn't over. The supervisor closed her folder. We'll require additional evaluation, home visits for all parties. Temporary placement remains with Mr. Waverley and Ms. Vale for now. Junie exhaled shakily. Blythe began to cry silently, shoulders shaking. Declan reached for their hands and held on like his grip could keep the world from pulling them apart. That night, the house was too quiet again. The twins had fallen asleep in Marina's bed, both of them pressed against her like they were trying to fuse into safety. Blythe's teddy bear lay between them, battered and loyal. Declan stood in the kitchen, staring at the sink without seeing it. His nerves still buzzed from the hearing from Gavin's smile from Junie's brave voice. Marina entered slowly, wrapped in a thick sweater, her hair loose. She looked exhausted in a way sleep didn't fix. I hate that they had to speak, she whispered. Declan's voice was rough. I hate that they learned how. Marina leaned against the counter. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The house hummed faintly with heating vents, the soft mechanical breath of warmth. Then Marina said, I keep waiting for the moment you decide this is too much. Declan turned to her. Do you want the truth? She nodded. He stepped closer, not touching her yet, as if afraid the wrong movement would make her retreat. The night I found you outside, he began, I told myself I wasn't responsible. I told myself there were shelters, systems, people paid to handle problems like that. Marina's eyes glistened. And then Junie looked at me, he continued, voice tightening, and she didn't beg like a child. She stated a fact, like an adult. We haven't eaten since yesterday. And something in me snapped. He swallowed. My ex-wife left because I became cold, he admitted. Because I cared more about the company than about humans. She told me I was turning into a man who could step over suffering and still sleep at night. Marina's breath caught. I bought this house after the divorce because it was quiet, Declan said. Because empty rooms don't ask anything of you. They don't need you. They don't leave. Marina's eyes filled. But that night, Declan whispered, I realized the quiet wasn't peace. It was punishment. And when you and the girls crossed my gate, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, Marina asked softly. What Declan's throat worked, his voice almost breaking. Purpose. He finally reached out, not to pull her in, but to rest his hand lightly on the counter near hers, close enough to be honest, far enough to be respectful. I didn't take you in because I'm a hero, he said. I took you in because I needed to choose to be human again, and you gave me the chance. Marina's tears fell freely now. I was so scared, she whispered. I thought I was going to die and leave them alone. Declan's eyes burned. You're not leaving them alone. She turned her face toward him. Why are you still here? Declan didn't dodge it. He didn't hide behind logistics or paperwork. Because I loved them, he said quietly. And because somewhere along the way I fell in love with you. Silence. Not empty silence. Full silence. Marina covered her mouth. Declan. I'm not asking for gratitude, he continued quickly, voice trembling with urgency. I'm not asking you to choose me because you feel you owe me anything. I'm asking you to know the truth. I'm here because I want to be. Marina stared at him as if she was relearning what kindness looked like. From down the hall, a small voice floated into the quiet Junie, half asleep. Mommy, don't cry. Marina wiped her face and whispered back, I'm okay, baby. Declan's heart twisted. Marina looked back at him, voice barely audible. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to trust something good. Declan nodded. Then we don't rush. We just keep showing up. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and steady. Inside, for the first time that day, Marina exhaled, like she wasn't holding her life in her chest anymore. And Declan realized the hardest part wasn't fighting the system. It was convincing two 5-year-old girls that love wouldn't disappear again. The evaluation arrived like weather, uninvited, unavoidable, and cold. A week after the hearing, Tessa Rourke showed up with a licensed child psychologist and a clipboard thick enough to feel like a threat. Declan let them in without protest, even though every part of him wanted to lock the gates and keep the world out. Junie and Blythe sat at the dining table with crayons and paper. Marina hovered nearby, trying to look calm. Her hands gave her away. It's just a check-in, Declan murmured to her. They're not here to punish you. Marina's eyes glistened. They always say that. The psychologist introduced herself softly and asked the twins to draw their safe place. Blythe drew a bed with 3 stick figures and a teddy bear in the middle. Junie drew the mansion, then added a small stone wall outside the gate with 2 tiny shapes beside it. Declan's throat tightened when he saw it. Tell me about this part, the psychologist asked, gently pointing to the wall. Junie didn't look up. That's where we almost disappeared. Blythe whispered. That's where the cold lived. The psychologist nodded slowly, taking notes. And what makes you feel safe now? Junie finally lifted her gaze. People who don't leave. Blythe held up her teddy bear. And pancakes. A faint smile flickered across Tessa's face before she caught herself. After the children's interview, the adults moved to the study. Tessa's supervisor joined by phone. The questions came one after another: structure, routines, boundaries, finances, medical plans. Declan answered with the same steadiness he used in boardrooms. But this wasn't business. This was breathing. Then the supervisor's voice sharpened. Mr. Waverley, are you seeking legal guardianship adoption? What is your long-term intent? Marina's shoulders tensed. Declan felt her panic fill the room like smoke. He could have spoken carefully, strategically. Instead, he told the truth. My long-term intent is for these children to be safe, he said, and for their mother to be supported. I'm not trying to replace her. I'm trying to make sure no one ever finds them freezing outside a gate again. The supervisor paused, and the biological father Declan's jaw tightened. He's pursuing involvement for control, not care. The children expressed fear. That matters. Tessa cleared her throat. We will evaluate visitation under supervision only if deemed appropriate. But as of now, placement remains stable. When the call ended, Marina let out a shaky breath. She looked at Declan as if he'd just pulled them back from a cliff again. I hate living like this, she whispered. Like we have to earn the right to exist. Declan stepped closer, voice low. You don't. But until the system catches up to the truth, we'll keep standing in front of it. In the hallway, Blythe ran into Declan's legs and hugged him hard. Junie followed quieter, pressing her forehead against his coat. You didn't let them take us, she said. Declan closed his eyes and held them both. Not today, he whispered. Not ever if I can help it. Snow returned the week of Christmas, gentle and steady, as if the city wanted to apologize for what it had done to them before. Declan's house no longer felt like a mansion. It felt like a home that had learned how to laugh. Mrs. Gow let the twins help decorate the tree. Blythe placed ornaments too low, right where small hands could reach them. Junie insisted the lights be perfectly spaced, then giggled when Declan pretended to miscount on purpose. Marina watched from the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, a mug of tea warming her palms. Her health was better still, fragile still, a balancing act, but her eyes had begun to carry something new. Hope. That evening, Declan found Junie in the hallway staring at the front door. What are you thinking about? He asked. Junie didn't turn. If you open it, bad things can come in. Declan knelt beside her. That's true, he admitted. But good things can come in too. Junie swallowed. Mommy says you opened it for us. Declan's throat tightened. Yes. And you didn't slam it, Junie said, voice small, even when it got hard. Declan reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I'm not going to be the kind of man who slams doors anymore. On Christmas Eve, they didn't go anywhere fancy. They stayed inside. Warm food, soft music, a movie playing quietly while the snow fell outside like hush. When the twins finally fell asleep on the rug tangled in a blanket like two kittens, Marina and Declan stood in the kitchen, making hot cocoa. Marina's voice was careful. I keep expecting you to regret this. Declan looked at her. Do you? She shook her head, tears shining. I regret that I ever thought I didn't deserve kindness. Declan set down the cocoa and faced her fully. Marina, I need to ask you something. Her breath caught as if she sensed the moment before it arrived. He didn't pull out a ring. He didn't kneel, not yet. Instead, he asked for something harder. Will you let me be in their lives on purpose, he said quietly. Not as a temporary shelter, not as a favor, but as a choice. As family. Marina's lips parted. She stared at him, the fear and longing fighting inside her. I'm complicated, she whispered. I'm sick sometimes. I'm scared most days. Declan nodded. Then we'll be complicated together. Marina's tears fell. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead lightly to his chest. I don't know how to do forever, she whispered. Declan's voice broke softly. We can start with tomorrow. In the living room, Blythe stirred in her sleep and murmured, pancakes. Junie answered without waking fully, always, and Declan realized this wasn't perfect, but it was real. The final meeting happened in January, when the holiday lights were gone and the world had returned to its harsh normal. But the house remained warm. Tessa arrived with her folder again, only this time her expression was different. Still professional, still cautious, but softer around the edges, as if she'd seen enough to believe in something. She sat at the dining table with Declan and Marina while the twins played in the next room. Every so often a burst of laughter floated in bright and reckless. Extended placement is approved, Tessa said. And based on the evaluations, supervised visitation for Mr. Cross will be recommended only if the children request it in the future. Marina exhaled, shoulders shaking. Declan felt his own breath finally return. There's another item, Tessa continued, sliding a document forward. A pathway to legal permanency, guardianship, and potentially adoption if all parties agree over time. Marina's eyes filled again. I don't want them to feel owned. Declan's voice was steady. They won't. They'll feel chosen. Tessa looked at Declan. This is not romantic. This is responsibility. It's school forms, medical decisions, therapy appointments, sleepless nights. Declan didn't flinch. I know. Tessa nodded once, as if marking something down that wasn't on paper. Then I believe you. After she left, Marina walked into the living room where Junie and Blythe were building a pillow fort. Blythe popped her head out. Did we pass? She asked. Junie added, serious as a judge, are we staying? Marina knelt, pulling both girls into her arms. Yes, she whispered. We're staying. Blythe squealed and hugged Marina's neck. Junie held on tighter, quiet tears soaking into Marina's sweater. Declan watched them, heart full and aching. That evening, he took Marina's hand in the kitchen, the same place he'd confessed his feelings weeks earlier. I want to make one more promise, he said. Marina looked at him, wary of hope. Declan spoke slowly. I'm starting the Winter Bridge Foundation officially. Emergency housing, medical support, legal advocacy, specifically for healthcare workers who fall through the cracks. What happened to you? It shouldn't happen to anyone. Marina's hand trembled in his. Declan, I can't fix everything, he said, voice thick. But I can refuse to be the man who walks past. Marina stepped closer, eyes shining. Then let me stand with you. He smiled, small, stunned, grateful. Later, when the twins were in bed, Declan returned to their room with two small stuffed animals, a second teddy bear, so Blythe's wouldn't have to be shared, and a soft rabbit for Junie. Junie stared at the rabbit, confused. For me, for you, Declan said, because you shouldn't have to be the adult all the time. Junie's face crumpled. She climbed into his arms like she'd been waiting for permission her whole life. Blythe hugged her new bear and whispered, Are we really a family now? Declan looked at the two 5-year-old girls who had survived a storm. He looked at the woman who had refused to give up even when her body failed her. And he answered with the only truth that mattered. Yes, he said, if you want to be. In the quiet, Junie whispered, We do. Outside, snow drifted past the window, and inside the door stayed open forever. Did this story move you? Share your thoughts in the comments, and rate this story from 1 to 10. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon so you don't miss other heartwarming stories. Click on the last screen to see the next emotional chapter waiting for you. See you in the next story.